Hello again, Vinyl Community. I'm Robert Fithin. Just want to talk about some records that I've picked up recently, including Steely Dan's Gaucho, which I've had for a little while, but I promised I would listen to that and give it a review. I had never heard it before, but I figure if I can sit through 10 jazz albums, I can certainly tackle Steely Dan's Gaucho. So that review is coming up, as well as a bunch of others. But before we get to any of that, I wanted to talk about this album from the band Fraternity, featuring Bon Scott. Of course, later of AC/DC fame. And yeah, this was the album that started the whole thing, that started me feeling like an idiot for brushing it off in the Black Friday video. I don't know what this is. And you acting all cool and cavalier. And above it all, ended up looking like an idiot because this is actually Bon Scott's band. I had no idea, even though it says it right there on the hype sticker. Anyway, had to do a video talking about how embarrassed I was about that. And basically going, yeah, I know, I'm an idiot, and then had to do some penance by listening to jazz albums. And so here we are. I'm going to actually talk about this album now that I have it. And yeah, it's a double album. It's not a very good way, I don't think, to be introduced to this band, because this is a bunch of outtakes and like rare tracks. So the audio quality on this definitely varies, for one thing. It's not a very consistent listen. Bon Scott is not the vocalist on all of the tracks either. They kind of sound like kind of a boogie band. It's kind of a bar band in some places. Boogie, or that early boogie band, kind of early 70s thing going on there. Maybe a little bit of more of the classic rock typical sound coming in. But they definitely do not sound like AC/DC at all. The band also features Jimmy Barnes. I talked about his band Cold Chisel in my Australian videos way back. And I guess Americans would mostly know him for doing the Good Times duet with Michael Hutchence and InXS on the, the Lost Boys soundtrack. But anyway, he's a part of this band as well. Nice package, though. It's a gatefold double album. Nice purple vinyl here. The label kind of looks like the old orange RCA labels. And it has this nice booklet with it. All kinds of photos and a big, long essay. Do people actually read these long essays anymore? I mean, I used to back in the day. You'd sit and just stare at album covers, and if you had something like this in there, you'd read the whole thing like 5 times. It does have a nice, concise thing on the back telling you where all the tracks came from. You find out that they have 2 albums, and there was actually a 3rd album planned. Some of the tracks on the first record come from that, and then you've got some TV appearances and some rare tracks and singles and things like that. But I think a better way to probably get introduced to this band, Fraternity, is by listening to the first couple of albums. Well, there are only 2 albums, really. This is kind of a hodgepodge listen. So yeah, probably not the best way. Like I said, audio quality varies. There's a cover of the band's Chest Fever on here that it's from a TV show. And it sounds like what I used to do as a kid when you had like a cassette recorder and you'd hold your microphone up to the TV speaker. I mean, the recording sounds like that. They do Elvis covers. They do a couple Chuck Berry covers. Again, Bon Scott, not the lead singer on all the songs. But some of the times when he is a lead singer, he does not really sound like the AC/DC Bon Scott. He's kind of definitely more reserved. He kind of sounds a little bit tired in some of the songs, but he doesn't have that big party guy, fun Bon Scott over-the-top energy that he has with AC/DC. So is this a mind-blowing listen that's going to blow you away and be like, oh, wow, I love that? Probably not. Probably not. Is this an archival release for collectors that really love Bon Scott and want to hear, some early stuff from him? Absolutely. And that's really what this is all about. I'm glad I got it. I probably won't listen to it that much, but it does make me curious to listen, like I said, to the actual 2 real albums from this band, see what they're like. The record, the 2-record set, record 1 is a little warped. So we're still doing that, apparently. We're taking the records out of the thing before they're ready and now they're warped. So yeah, record 1 of this is warped, but there it is. That's what I thought of Fraternity. Better than the Dave Brubeck Quartet? Yes. Probably not as good as the Ornette Coleman, though. And by the way, thanks to everybody that was commenting in my jazz video telling me the Art Blakey albums to listen to that concentrate more on the drums and less on the horns. I checked one of those out, and yeah, those are not bad. I like his, I'm into the drumming that he does. They're super skilled, and those rolls going right back into just flawless. So not into the horns, though. So thank you for those suggestions. So another album I was really happy to find recently is the EP from Tool called Opiate from 1992. And now my original pressings of Tool's early stuff is now complete with this album, or EP as it were. I remember I first heard this in college back in 93. It was like, I think right before or right after Undertow had come out. And we had this, and I started on the college radio station, and I was just like blown away by this album. It sounded so different than everything else that was out at the time. They really were kind of off doing their own thing. Still sounded hard, still sounded metal, and with some really progressive drumming. But of course, it does have that early 90s kind of mix to it, where the mid-range is dropped out, a lot of bass, a lot of like compressed high end, but definitely has a 90s sound, or early 90s sound. But yeah, definitely their own thing as well, musically. So yeah, Tool Opiate with Sweat, that was a song we played all the time. And all kinds of cool stuff on here. Just kind of like the origins. You can hear like it's the early kind of Tool. It doesn't go way out like some of their other later stuff does, but they still kind of, have their own thing going on here, like I said. This album actually is an original pressing. And as you can see, I think the later ones have a different label, but this has the original label on the inside. And it also has the hidden track, The Gaping Lotus Experience, which is it's one of those albums where it's got two grooves going on at the same time. So depending on where you drop your stylus at the beginning of side 2, it's either going to play Cold and Ugly, the live track that was recorded like New Year's Eve, along with Jerk Off. It's either going to play that or it's going to play the hidden track, the Gaping Lotus Experience, which I think on the CD is just like a hidden track normally, like way at the end. But yeah, so you've really got to pick up your tone arm and keep dropping it to get to the right song if you want to hear a particular one. But there's several albums like that. There's a Jack White album like that I have, but I don't know how many albums are like that where you have the two songs playing and it just depends on where you drop the needle, which one plays. That'd make an interesting video if somebody details all the albums that have that. But yeah, this is definitely one of them. I don't know if the reissues do that or not, but this one definitely does. And of course, the Gaping Lotus Experience is that really weird, I had a friend once that took some drugs and ended up having sex with my couch. I do not have any friends like that. Although all of my friends have a friend like that just will have sex with the couch. But yeah, Tool Opiate, glad to finally have this. And it's so weird because I found this at one of those sales that I go to, state sales. And it was one where you buy, the individual records. And this was in a box of like country and pop vocal records. So they had the Frank Sinatra. They had old country people like Jeannie Seeley and Hank Snow. And I think, Ray Price was in there. They had a couple of 80s country people. They had some Waylon and Jennings in there, but I already had those albums, so I left those for somebody else to get. And then this. And it was just like, you ever experience that where you go to like a sale or a flea market or something, and they'll have a box of records, and there'll be like one in there that is just like not anything like the others. And this was in there. I think it's like, there were two boxes, Charlie Brown, records to sell and records not to sell. This was in the wrong box. And yeah, I got this for like $2. And also got a John Anderson album as well. John Anderson, the country guy, not the Yes guy. But anyway, yeah, really was blown away to find this in that box. And finally glad to have this. And speaking of finally, yes, I'm going to do it. My review of Steely Dan's Gaucho. I've been putting this off and putting this off. I've had this for months. I said I wasn't going to actually listen to this until I actually had the record, and I finally found it for like $3. Wow. From 1980, Steely Dan's last album from their original era. I know they put out one like 20 years after that or whatever, but this is basically considered their last album from the golden age of Steely Dan, right before, like 2 years before Donald Fagen put out The Nightfly, which is one of the worst albums I've ever heard. And of course, this follows AJ Aja from Steely Dan. And not a big fan of that album at all. I think that's one of the most overrated albums of all time. But this is the one I've never heard because I thought it would sound like Aja, and I didn't want another Steely Dan album like that. And I had people saying, no, this is more of like a return to form. This is a better album. You might actually like this one. I do not. This is terrible. Babylon Sisters I'd heard before because I had it on a compilation CD of this, A Decade of Steely Dan or whatever that is. I've always disliked that song. Don't like it at all. This whole smooth jazz thing, the whole like, you know, hey baby, yeah. I'm not into that. And Hey 19 I've always liked. It was the big hit from this. It's the one where the sleazy older guy is dating the 19-year-old and they can't relate to anything, each other or whatever on any kind of ground. She doesn't know who Aretha Franklin is and that kind of thing. I always thought that was funny. It was like a funny song. It was kind of a nice portrait of a real, you know, guy that's just like, what am I doing? You know, I mean, how did I get here? You know? And I always thought that the smooth jazz sound of that was them trying to say this is the kind of music this guy would listen to. It's like, you know, it's like Frank Zappa doing 50-50 or something. He's trying to sound like an obnoxious hard rock guy because that's what the song's about. And I thought that that's kind of what they were doing here in Hey 19. They were doing this sleazy kind of schmaltzy, smooth jazz because this guy's so cheesy and, you know, he's with this 19-year-old girl that he can't relate to. And I thought come to find out, of course, after hearing the Asia album and hearing this album, no, the whole album sounds like that. So hearing Hey 19 in this kind of form with all the other songs, it doesn't make it as good of a song anymore because I now realize that the music is not a parody. They're being serious with that music. So, but I used to like that song. And then, yeah, I don't know, the other songs on here, the Glamour Profession, I get it, it's about Hollywood and all the excesses of Hollywood, and the same thing with the Gaucho song about drugs or something, or it's all been done before about the excesses of Hollywood and the dark side of fame. It's been done better by so many other songs and bands and whatever. I just am not into it. And the album just kind of peters out. I don't even remember these last two songs, My Rival and Third World Man. I heard this twice, and I can't even tell you what those two songs even sound like. So yeah, not a fan. Don't like it at all. Don't think it. I mean, this is to think that this is the same band that gave us like Reeling in the Years and Do It Again, and even My Old School, where they kind of start to go a little jazz. I mean, I still really like that song. To think that this is where they end up, and just this jazz rock schmaltz, just devoid of any kind of like emotion or. It just, every song sounds very similar. I don't know. I don't care for this at all. Obviously, just like the Asia album, this is something that you would want to test out a stereo on. You want to play this on your cheap stereo so that it sounds good, because this album will sonically sound good on any turntable. So obviously, the store salesman at the record store, at the record player store, stereo store is going to put this on to try to impress the customer. I mean, I totally get that aspect of it, at least. But, yeah, I don't know. Steely Dan, Gaucho, not a fan. And then that Time Out of Mind song, they bring in Mark Knopfler. It's like, that's just perfect. It's like, how can we make this album even worse? Oh, I know. Let's get a complete asshole to play on it. Yes, perfect. Mark Knopfler. Get him on the phone. Here he comes now. Because we need... Oh, beautiful. No one can do that like Mark Knopfler. Let's use it. Take 863. Perfect. Yeah, Steely Dan, Gaucho. Finally heard it. You know, after hearing all those jazz albums, I figure I might as well check this out. And actually, I'd rather hear the jazz albums. Just schmaltz. And it doesn't even have an insipid gatefold to make fun of. You know what? Let's move on to some better music. How about Twink with Think Pink from 1970. Glad I got this. Been wanting this for a while. It's had a couple of reissues. One of them was a record store day thing on some nice pink vinyl, but it was in mono. And it's like, why would you put a 1970, especially like a December 1970 album, fold it down to mono? I don't think it was ever released in mono to begin with. And I love the stereo with the psychedelic stuff like this. But anyway, it's John Charles Alder, and he is, of course, Twink. That's his name. And this is, I think, his only solo album. He's worked with the Pink Fairies. They're a part of this. So with Deviants and all that whole psychedelic group of people. It's got Steve Tuke on it. He was half of Tyrannosaurus Rex with Mark Bolan. He contributes to this as well. It's got a lot of the things that you would want. Checks off a lot of boxes for the psychedelic music of the late 60s, early 70s. It actually sounds a little bit more 1968 than 1970. It's got the nice muted fuzz guitar going on. It's kind of a snaky kind of guitar effects. It's got the just the freak out tracks where they're just banging on stuff and just acting like they're high at a party or something like that. A lot of groovy stuff on here. It's got a nice instrumental on here, a couple of those that just kind of drift you off, and side 2 has a nice acoustic flourishes in a couple of tracks, like the track called, which I learned that you can't say on YouTube. But yeah, there's that, and 3 Little Piggies, and the Sparrow. The 10,000 Words in a Cardboard Box, probably one of the better tracks on here. It starts with the just kind of an instrumental with some nice sitar and just swirling effects and stuff like that. Some nice pounding drums, great absurdist lyrics. Think Pink from Twink. This is just the regular black vinyl version, not the pink vinyl, but this apparently is one of the better sounding reissues, as the sticker says on here. It comes in this plastic cover. This is the 50th anniversary reissue from 2020, and it's supposed to be one of the better sounding ones. So it does sound pretty good. The vinyl itself is very quiet on side 1, and then side 2 has some crackles in it. So maybe this needs to be cleaned before it's played. It has a pink lyric sheet in here as well, so some nice little insert in there. But yeah, Twink with Think Pink. Definitely recommend that if you're into the late 60s, early 70s psychedelic stuff. It's got a lot of the stuff that you're listening for on that one album. Bootsy! He's Player of the Year on his 3rd album from January of 1978. Love this gatefold. Love that photo of him, and so glad that the previous owner decided to leave the glasses here intact. You can actually pop these out. It's perforated. You're supposed to take these out and then wear them, but I'm glad whoever it was left them in there. This features a cast of Players of the Year, including Fred Wesley is a part of this as well. Bootsy's Rubber Band, like I said, I think it's the 3rd album, and it's a party album. It's your typical Bootsy Collins thing, not to be taken too seriously. I love his whole character. I love his whole charisma, his whole astronomical groove. The groove is in the heart song from Delight. He's part of that. That was his big thing in the 90s, early, I think 1990, and I heard a version of that where he's completely removed. Like the whole Bootsy Collins track is removed from the song. It's like, why would you have Groove is in the Heart without Bootsy Collins? He's the whole reason that song is cool. Anyway, he's on here, not to be taken too seriously, just a very fun album. Not something you want to listen to at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday by yourself while sipping, tea or something. This is a party album. You crank this up at a party, everybody's having a good time. And yeah, good stuff from Bootsy Collins. I think this actually went gold. But love the cover, love the gatefold. Love the whole cast of characters. Bootsy, Player of the Year. And we wrap it up going back to Australia, where we started. Specifically, this one from Sydney, Australia. It's InXS. And this is, of course, Listen Like Thieves. Now, I usually don't talk much about really common albums like this. Because, this is from 1985. A lot of people have this. It's not super expensive or super rare or anything like that. But I found out that it's a gatefold. And I've had this, and I didn't realize there was a gatefold version available. And so, yeah, the very first pressings of this are a gatefold, and there's only 2 pressings that are the gatefold. The rest are all just a single album sleeve, and I never knew that until, last week. So, learning new stuff all the time. It even has a sticker on here that says Special Limited Edition Album Cover. And it's actually a gold stamp promo thing. But obviously, I mean, a lot of people have heard this album. I don't have to really go into a lot of detail about InXS Listen Like Thieves. This was the album that broke them in the U.S. I think it went to number 10 or something like that on the charts. All kinds of hits on here. Four different singles. What You Need, the huge one. It still gets played all the time. Listen Like Thieves, title track. Kiss the Dirt, and This Time Be the Last Time That We Will Fight Like This. Tragic what happened to the lead singer, Michael Hutchence, but this was when they were definitely in their prime, and then the album Kick that followed this up, just as good as this one. But very exciting kind of music, great music for the mid-'80s. You didn't hear a lot of really cool music like this that wasn't overtaken by synths and kind of a plastic sound. These guys still could rock out. But yeah, I always liked this album and was just surprised to find out that there's actually a gatefold version of this. So I just thought that was kind of cool. But yeah, InXS Listen Like Thieves. And that is going to do it for this this video of vinyl finds. Just thought I'd throw this in here, you know, just show you some of the albums I've been picking up. And I know that I had to review that Steely Dan Gaucho at one point or another, and this was the point. Coming up, I still have my video about the most notorious albums of all time. I'm going to actually work my way through like Metal Machine music and, you know, having fun with Elvis on stage and that Shags album and Trout Mask Replica, all those and more coming up in that video. I'm also going to do my very first record show. After going to record shows for decades, I'm actually going to be selling records for the first time at a record show in Collinsville, Illinois, coming up on December 10th, and I will definitely make a video and share my experiences of my very first time with you. So that and a bunch more is coming up. Hopefully you'll check some of those out. Hopefully I will talk to you again soon. I'm Robert Fithen. Thanks again for watching.